Hello, my name is Christopher Renstrom, and I'm your weekly horoscope columnist here on Astrology Hub. And this time I wanted to talk to you about the solar eclipse taking place in the zodiac sign of Virgo on September 21st. Now, a solar eclipse in astrology always is associated with a very dramatic departure from everything that has come before. In other words, you might think that you're heading in one direction, and then when the solar eclipse takes place in a certain area of your chart that it triggers, you may find yourself suddenly heading in a different direction. This is how powerful the solar eclipse can be. And it's especially powerful if the solar eclipse takes place within 2 to 3 degrees of a pertinent planet in your own astrological chart. Now, when we're talking about a solar eclipse taking place in the zodiac sign of Virgo, eclipses traditionally were pretty much read by astrologers as impacting an entire nation or an entire people. Okay, they were seen as impacting things that are taking place on a larger than life stage than just one's own personal life. And that certainly was the tradition in astrology for a number of centuries. So when we look at something like a solar eclipse taking place in the zodiac sign of Virgo, we remember certain things. Like, for instance, Virgo is the zodiac sign of work, health, and service. And because a solar eclipse is supposed to be talking about a dramatic shift or change, we would be looking for things, dramatic shifts or change is dramatic shifts or changes taking place in the area of work, health, and service. Now, these eclipses have been taking place in the zodiac signs of Virgo and Pisces since about the fall of last year. And so when we think of something like, oh, I don't know, work, have there been dramatic changes in the idea of work? Well, the first thing that comes to mind that everyone seems to be talking about is how AI is going to be changing the workforce and how you work as a person and even how you live. It might even be taking away some jobs or redefining whole industries. In fact, some people are talking about the advent of AI as being the new industrial revolution. So that's something that we can say, all right, that's going to be associated with eclipses taking place in Virgo, whether they're solar or lunar eclipses. And since about last fall, that has started to become more prominent. It's started to become louder in the day-to-day conversation. So that's work. And then we go to something like, I don't know, health. Are there radical upsets or changes taking place in the area of health? And you really don't have to look past the headlines to see, with all the upsets that are going on in the CDC and attitudes about certain medical therapies, that there is indeed a lot going on in that area. And it doesn't matter where you fall on the political spectrum, whether you're for it or against it. It's really hard to say that it's not taking place. There are tremendous upheavals and changes taking place in health and the administration of health. And finally, we look at something like service. What are your attitudes about service? And when we think of service or service jobs, one again can't help but think about the very dramatic cuts that have taken place in bureaucracy, that the bureaucracy of the United States of America, for instance, which is where I live and pretty much what I'm talking about with this example, service cuts in services going from forestry to Medicaid. Okay, these are very dramatic. These are causing a lot of tumult and turmoil, and they are feeding a lot of controversy and a lot of argument. So these are the sorts of things that we look for with an eclipse that is taking place in a zodiac sign. How is the eclipse energy, which is coursing blindly through a horoscope, causing these tumults, these upsets, these changes according to the theme of the zodiac sign? Okay, so this is how the solar eclipse in Virgo is taking place on the larger stage in terms of our culture, in terms of our society. But how is this solar eclipse in Virgo going to take place in your own life? How is it going to impact your own particular horoscope? And that's something that I would like to talk to you about today. I want you to think of the words work, health, and service as I talk about the impact of the solar eclipse on Virgo on each of these zodiac signs. Perhaps a word that I really want you to focus on of the three is service. What is your attitude about service? What does a servant or service do? Is it something that's supposed to be selfless? Is it something that's supposed to help you? Is someone providing a service to be trusted or not to be trusted? If you're the person providing the service, do you feel exploited or used in any sort of way? And is service a value? Is service something that we really appreciate, or is service just for people who are lower than us to go ahead and do? Does service continue people who just take and never give back? Does service encourage a sort of sense of enfeebleness or not doing everything that you could do because if you hang out, you can have a service provide a service for you in some sort of way? Or is it something that you take pride in? You know, do you love helping people out? Do you love helping people to help themselves? So these are ideas that are all bundled up in the zodiac sign of Virgo, and these are things that are going to be coming up for you in your own lives, but it's going to be done according to your zodiac sign's view of Virgo. You know, you may be born under a zodiac sign that gets along with Virgo. You may be born under a zodiac sign that doesn't like Virgo. You may be born under a zodiac sign that just doesn't get Virgo. Or you may be born under a zodiac sign that thinks that all Virgos are just critical and nitpicky and you know, henpeck people to death or something along those lines. But there's more to the zodiac sign of Virgo than just that. First of all, Virgo is very much a woman sign. Virgo very much identifies with people who aren't particularly powerful or on top, who are in positions of service and maybe even positions of subservience. And what Virgo does is that she acts as a protectress, as a patroness of these people, people in the service positions, people in hardworking positions are beloved to Virgo. They are blessed by Virgo. Virgo looks out after them. And so this is a zodiac sign that has more of a tendency to identify with the worker or even the underdog or someone who's been disenfranchised than it is going to identify with those in power or a superior position. This is simply the perspective, the point of view of this particular zodiac sign. A story that I wanted to share with you before I get into these forecasts is a story that happened to my husband years ago. My husband right now is the artistic director of a ballet company here in the United States of America. But before he became the artistic director of this ballet company, he was the associate artistic director of another ballet company. It was a ballet company that he had danced with for 20 years, and he had moved up through the ranks from a dancer with the company to ballet master to working on administrative duties to helping out with fundraising and writing press releases. I mean, he really learned the nuts and bolts of how to run a ballet company. And at the point of when this story takes place, he was an associate artistic director to the artistic director. And basically, he was helping out the artistic director of this company that he used to work for. But this artistic director was very much in charge, and so he was going to run the company the way he wanted to run it. And this had been known as a very well-to-do company at this time, but it had fallen on financial hardships, rough times financially, and it had to move from one major city to another major city. And for a company that had been so identified with one major city to suddenly pick up and move to another city was really hard to do. Some of the dancers came and some of the dancers didn't come, and they had to sort of set up house again, and here with an entire ballet company. So my husband was very much involved in all of that, and he had been pushing, gently pushing and encouraging the artistic director to go back to performing the old repertoire, which were these classical ballets, which were very robust and had been part of this company's profile. But the artistic director at this time, because of the move, was very frightened about that. He was very anxious about that. He wanted to continue to produce little small ballets, and maybe little one acts or little pieces, things that would, in his mind's eye, balance the budget. And although they weren't very expensive to produce, they weren't up to the level that this company had been up to previously. And audiences were starting to be like, maybe this company has lost what they used to have. And they weren't really that thrilled. They weren't really that interested because they were watching a lot of what would be called black box theater ballets taking place in a very large theater space. When you come to a large theater space, you want to see something spectacular. You want to see something grand. You don't want to see three people in a unitard running around something and maybe doing a somersault. You want to see a show. And this is not what was taking place. My husband had finally convinced the artistic director of this company to do a ballet that they had done years ago. And they rented the sets and the costumes, and the set showed up one day, and they took it out of the crates, and this set hadn't been used in 30 years. All right. So imagine a backdrop, okay, that hadn't been used in 30 years. It's kind of glommed together, stuck together, plastered together. There's dust, it smells, there's dirt. It's really, imagine taking a piece of clothing of yours out of a trunk where it had just been thrown on in 30 years ago and like taking a look at it. And so it was a miserable sight. All right. They put it down on the stage. They did, what you want to do with the set is roll it on out, like a carpet or something, but they put it thump, down on the stage, and it looked pathetic, and the artistic director turned to my husband and he yelled at him and he said, you wanted to push for this. This is all on you. Our company's not ready to do a big ballet like this. We should stick with the ballets that I wanted to program, that I wanted to do. This is all your fault. It's going to be a failure, and it's all going to be your fault. I'm not taking responsibility. It's all your fault. And my husband looked at the set, which was, you know, this pile, but in different protrusions and directions. And he immediately felt incredibly depressed about the whole thing. And the artistic director was yelling at him. And he turned to the artistic director and kind of yelled back. And he said, listen, or he didn't yell back, he raises his voice. And he raised his voice and he said, listen, we have to push towards the larger ballets again. This is the time to do it. If we continue doing the small little black box pieces, we'll die a slow death. We have to push, we have to show them, we have to show this city that we can do this type of thing. And so the two of them, argued with high-pitched voices and things like that, pitched voices, pitched tempers. Watching all of this was a dancer with the company. She wasn't dancing with the company now. She had been a dancer with the company in the heyday of this company's fame. And she was very well known at the time. And she's a beautiful and graceful and lovely woman. But what she had been listening to both of them, and what she did is that she listened to both of them, and then very quietly, without calling any attention to herself, she went over to this huge mess of a set and she began peeling off one corner from the rest of the set. They continued arguing, you're the one who wanted this. We have to do bigger ballets. This fight continued. And she peeled off a little bit more, and she peeled off a little bit more, and she peeled off a little bit more. Now, it's a tremendous set, and this wasn't very dramatic. She wasn't making a lot of progress, but this is the point. She was doing the work. She was doing the work to salvage this set, to put it back together again. And this is the thing that caught both my husband and the artistic director's attention at the time. That they were arguing, and they looked over at her, and she was very quietly unpeeling this set. And it stopped them both in their tracks. And they realized this is what it's about. It's about the work. It's about setting something up again. It's about, okay, I don't know how this is going to work, but this is a set and we're going to unpeel it and we're going to put it back together again. And both of them stopped fighting and they went and they joined her. I mean, clearly they weren't going to be able to do this whole thing by themselves, but what had happened in this moment, in this beautifully Virgo moment, without calling any attention to herself, this ex-dancer with the company had gone and quietly unpeeled the set, and my husband and the artistic director had stopped their arguing, and they were also sitting down, kneeling, and working on unpeeling the set. And it was this work. It was this quiet work that brought them together. And this has always stayed with me as a really beautiful example of Virgo. We talk about the jobs we do. We talk about our hard work. We talk about the rough day we had at the office, or maybe it was a wonderful day. Maybe we're working 24/7. Maybe we're looking for work, but Virgo is the work itself, not the work that's done. This is my body of work. This is what I've done. Look at what I've accomplished. It's the work itself, the work that needs to be done. And by her focusing on the work that needed to be done, this immediately calmed down the tempers. It brought two divisive voices together as they began unpeeling this set. So it wasn't about ideologies. It wasn't about who was right and who was wrong. It wasn't about pointing the finger or who was going to take responsibility or have you no shame. Did I win in my argument of progressing? Did I win in my argument of, wanting to go back? None of this mattered. What mattered was unpeeling this set and getting it back in shape for a show. A show, by the way, which happened to be a great success. It was wonderful. The company at that time danced it absolutely brilliantly, that ballet, and it was really, really wonderful. And it turned into this calling card of that this company was back, okay, that it was ready to pick up the former days of glory and to move forward. So that's something that I want you to think about when we think about a solar eclipse in Virgo. The solar eclipse is a time when the moon blocks the sun from view in the sky. And if you're able to see the solar eclipse, if it's happening in a part of the world where it's visible, then it can be a very dramatic event. But even if you don't see it, it still impacts an astrological chart. So what it does is that the energy, because the sun has been blocked by the moon, it becomes a darkened energy, not dark like an evil energy, but dark as in hard to see, hard to understand, hard to find my way with this energy, hard to think of finding your way in the dark, okay? It's hard to see, hard to understand, hard to put my mind around. And so there's that idea of the darkness, but at the same time, there's the idea of the eclipse where there is this shot of energy that courses through the horoscope, where all of a sudden the properties or the characteristics of the zodiac sign that's being eclipsed become of great relevance, of a sort of urgency in the astrological chart itself. And so wherever you are in the zodiac in relationship to a sign that's being eclipsed, maybe the eclipse is taking place in your own sign, maybe it's taking place in a sign that squares you, it becomes very powerful. And at first, you may not know what to do with it, which is why eclipses take a number of months to unfold. They give this kind of shock of energy, but then they take time to unfold because the moon doesn't stay in front of the sun. It moves on, the sun returns, and it lights the sky again. And so we need that time following an eclipse to make sense of what that energy is, to make sense of the shock that we got to the system. Hello, my name is Christopher Renstrom, and I'm your weekly horoscope columnist here on Astrology Hub. And I want to let you know about something exciting. Right now, my class, The Cosmic Calendar, is on sale, but only for a limited time. In this 3-week course, I'll guide you through creating your own personalized calendar, designed to align your life with the natural rhythms of your own natal chart, using astrology. Thinking about launching a business? Looking to attract a partner? Or simply trying to figure out the right time to make your next big move? With this technique, you'll know exactly when to act and when to hold back. But don't wait. This offer is only available for a little while longer. Just click the link below to join now. And now, let's get back to the episode. If you're born under Aries or you have Aries rising, this solar eclipse in the zodiac sign of Virgo is going to be a little hard for you to understand. That's because Virgo and Aries don't really have much in common with one another. They're not of the same element. They're not of the same mode. And what I mean by element is that Aries is a fire sign, Virgo is an earth sign, so they're not of the same element. They're not of the same mode, meaning that I'm referencing the cardinal, fixed, and mutable signs in astrology. Aries is a cardinal sign, and Virgo is a mutable sign, so they don't have that in common. And the other thing that they don't have in common is that they don't square, they don't oppose, they don't trine, they don't sextile. They don't have the traditional Ptolemaic relationship to one another. So they just can't find a fit with one another, Aries and Virgo. And so what we do is that when we look at something like this, as an astrologer, when you look at two signs that are forming a quincunx to one another, and that's what its official title is, these are two zodiac signs that are struggling to find a fit. And so what you want to do is give them room and grace to not find a fit, because that's kind of the whole point. It's the struggle to find a fit, something that we would call nowadays a work in progress, which really defines a quincunx energy. Okay, it's something in which what comes out of the work to find a fit actually produces actions in your life. It's like someone who's a lyricist and writes a pop song. They don't just write one pop song and that's it. They're like, oh, great, I wrote one pop song and that's it. They keep writing pop songs. You know, they're they're trying to find that perfect song, but they'll never find that perfect song. And it's in their attempt to write the best song that you possibly could write that they produce a body of work. And that's one way of looking at how a quincunx works. It never stops working at trying to find a fit. But what's interesting is that you can sort of take a couple of things that the two zodiac signs have in common, but they wouldn't really recognize about one another. Why don't they recognize this about one another? Well, Aries has a tendency to be very hot-headed and rash, and Virgo has a tendency to be more cerebral or analytical. So what could they possibly have in common? And actually, two things come to mind that they have in common. First of all, is that Aries and Virgo both deal with the head. Okay. Aries actually rules the head in astrology, and Virgo is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is the planet of the mind. It's the planet of thinking. So this relationship to the head and thinking is something that the two zodiac signs have in common. Aries is more likely to butt heads with someone else, you know, and Virgo is more likely to not get involved in a conflict and try to size it up at a distance. But nevertheless, that's something that they have in common. Another thing that they have in common, which is very strong that they have in common, is that these are two zodiac signs very much focused on self-improvement. Aries always feels like it could do better. Okay. And Aries, because it's ruled by Mars, has a sort of athletic relationship to improvement and doing better. That, you know, Aries can be like a sports athlete, you know, well, I lost that game and I could get miserable and depressed and things like that. Or I could come back harder and stronger and better at it than I was before. And that's what I'm going to do with the next game. I'm not going to let that, you know, team or that tennis person or whatever beat me again. I'm going to perfect what it is that I do and beat them next time. Okay, that's an Aries relationship to self-improvement. Virgo's relationship to self-improvement is pretty much mercurial seen through an earth sign perspective, which is what about what I did was wrong or fell short or was faulty or had a problem. Okay. So Virgo isn't, going to be like, I'm going to come back bigger and better than I was before. Aries, it's not going to do that. It's going to be like, well, that this thing that I did could have been better. My method, I could improve the technique or the way that I approached. Virgo is a more critical thinker. And when you're a critical thinker, one of the problems with a critical thinker is a tendency to emphasize what's wrong rather than what's right. Okay. Great critical thinkers actually get to a point where they can fuse the two or put it together in a constructive way, but that takes years of practice of being a critical thinker. The tendency is more to, point out like, this wasn't the best it could have been, or this you could have focused on. So these are the two different approaches that Aries and Virgo have to self-improvement. Because the solar eclipse is taking place in Virgo and not Aries, so if you're born under Aries or Aries rising, you have to deal with that critical, maybe negative thinking, that picking apart thinking. That if you were a Virgo, you'd have no problem with it. It would be like, yeah, no, you're right, that was wrong. I should have put the pasta in a little earlier and taken it out faster, made it more al dente rather than soggy. Yes, you're right. The Virgo is learning through criticism. Aries is kind of like, get off my back, or, it was fine the way that it was done. Aries being a fire sign can feel like, they're really getting ridden or nitpicked, or the thing that's the most genuine and fabulous about them, which is in the moment and, going at something, that someone's like, well, you could, it's just like, why am I being criticized by a bystander? Why am I being criticized by someone who's sitting on the bench? I reject your criticisms, bystander, bench sitting critic person. Okay, but what Aries can begin to appreciate over a period of time is that someone's not just trying to bring you down, someone's trying to help you to be better than you can be. It's like what a coach does or a tutor. At first, we might resist, but then, if we're going to play sports, you have to work with the coach. And if you want to excel in a particular education or a course of action, you may need a tutor or a mentor. So this solar eclipse in Virgo is going to introduce that kind of energy into your life, where you may be wrestling with how you receive criticism, but also how you criticize yourself. Aries can have a tendency to get very down on themselves if they messed something up. This is not a fire sign, that's like, oh, no big deal. I'm going to slough it off and move on to something else, like Leos and Sagittarians can do. Aries is more kind of like, ooh, how could you have messed that up? It's got to be done better next time. They can really get angry at themselves. That's a Mars ruled sign. Mars is named after the Roman god of war. So getting used to this idea of not only working with someone else or someone criticizing you, but your own attitude about self-improvement, perhaps replacing anger at yourself and frustration with yourself, replacing it with focusing on a technique, focusing on your practice, focusing on the way that you approach something, which are all Virgoan perspectives. Virgo's like, okay, I did that all right this one time, but I could have perfected this technique. I could have adjusted the way I put in the pasta. I could have adjusted how much salt I added to the meal. So that idea of experimenting, of playing, this is very much a Mercury thing. It shows up in Gemini and it shows up in Virgo. So the more that Aries, if you're Aries rising or Aries born under the zodiac sign of Aries, the more that you can sort of it's not like be less heated, but be almost more playful, be almost more experimental in the way that you do things. Don't get down on yourself so much. Be like, okay, that didn't work out, but I can try again. But when I try again, let's try again smarter. Okay, let's try again by having reviewed what could be improved upon. If you can get into that sort of mindset, then I think that you're going to find that the solar eclipse in Virgo is doing more than just highlighting a corner of your chart that you're not very good at, that this isn't a personal strength. It's more than just highlighting that. It's highlighting that but then also what can you learn from that to improve yourself? Less in a you better improve yourself, Aries, and more of kind of like, okay, let's try it like this and let's try it again. Let's see what happens, to sort of adopt that mindset. And I think that if you can adopt that mindset, you're going to see the solar eclipse in Virgo taking you much further than you would have gone under your own steam. If you're born under Taurus or you have Taurus rising, this solar eclipse in Virgo is going to be really good for you, okay? Why is it going to be so good for you? Well, Taurus is an earth sign and Virgo is an earth sign, which means that the two zodiac signs trine one another. A trine is basically two or three zodiac signs that all share the same element. You get three earth signs, three water signs, three air signs, three fire signs. And because they all share the same element, they're simpatico. They get one another. You don't have to explain things if you're born, if your sign shares the same element of the sign of someone else. You get one another. These are like the friends who fill in one another's conversations. If you're like, well, I'm thinking of, and they can name exactly what you were thinking of. Okay. So there's a simpatico quality here. And a getting along quality and a very supportive and encouraging quality. If one earth sign says to another earth sign, you could do better here, let me show you how, the earth sign isn't going to be like, oh, get away, I can do it myself. They're going to be like, oh yeah, no, sure, show me how I can do this better. And it's like, oh, all I have to do is this. And oh, that's great. Oh my God, you're so brilliant. Thank you. Okay, that's earth signs, like actually put the two earth signs at work on a project and they're going to be fine. Okay, and they could show one another how to do it better and they're going to get along great. Okay, so this is what's kind of going on here with the solar eclipse in Virgo. It's showing you, what you could do better in your life, where you could go in your life, based on your relationship to work and industry. And Taurus is very much a zodiac sign that's connected to work and industry and the pleasure, and the joy of that. Now, Taurus is, as I said, a zodiac sign that's associated with work and industry, despite the fact that it's ruled by Venus, which is not exactly known for getting her hands dirty, despite that. And so there's a part of Taurus that does like to lounge around and relax and things like that. But that's usually because Taurus put in a lot of work, it put in a lot of energy. So Taurus is the earth sign more than even Virgo or Capricorn that works hard and plays harder. Okay, so this is something that Taurus very much does. So when we have this solar eclipse taking place in the zodiac sign of Virgo, what that's going to do is actually sort of heighten that earth sensibility in Taurus. All right, and let me kind of unpack that a little bit more for you. Earth signs typically want things to be consistent, okay? A lot of words get thrown at earth signs like structure and discipline and focus, and they are indeed all of those things. But earth signs really want a consistency in life. They want a stability in life. Um, it's like, what they say about the markets nowadays. It's like the markets want stability, okay? And that's something that makes them thrive. If you throw in a lot of instability, the markets sort of retreat to chaise longue, an anxious 19th century heroine. And they're like, oh no, unpredictability. I have to retreat to my chaise longue and just sort of go into a faint, or I can't take this. The markets are so like retreating if there's any sort of unpredictability or something like this. So markets, for instance, want stability. They want things to, trade partners to be getting along and prices to be fair and people producing things and everyone's happy. Okay. And this is kind of the Taurian sensibility. They want that consistency. They want the stability. Taurus is happy to whistle while it works, as long as it knows that it's getting paid on time and doing a good job and it's getting along with everyone that they're working with, and things are good. Uh, Taurus has a very optimistic view of life and work. But if you're born under Taurus or you have Taurus rising, then you know that for the past 8 years, life hasn't been like that. Okay, you've been thrown a lot of curveballs from out of left field, and And that's because you've had Uranus, the planet of revolution and change, traveling through your zodiac sign, and Uranus will spend 7 years in a zodiac sign. And so as a Taurus, you've been knocked off, your path, okay? Whether it was Saturn coming into Aquarius and being connected to COVID, where the world shut down and and that upset everyone's work patterns, that upset everyone's health, that started all these sorts of controversies. And then maybe it's coming back from that, and how do you build that again? Maybe things were going on in your personal life where things were upsetting the stability of your home, the stability of your relationship, the stability of your family. So people born under Taurus or who have Taurus rising have really gone through the mill, all right, in which they've really been knocked off balance and they've lost a sense of that stability and predictability. Now, some of you might be saying, but Christopher, Uranus has moved on into Gemini, and that's true, but a planet just doesn't like leave. Like it's like, bye, Taurus, and like Taurus is like, bye, Uranus, I'll go back to my life. You're still kind of in shock or trying to figure it out or something along those lines. So if you're born into Taurus or you have Taurus rising, you either went through an extraordinary revolution and change in your life, and this might have upset things to the degree that you're a very different person than you were back in 2018 when Uranus entered your sign. Or you might have gone on a full spin of the wheel. Revolution, before it referred to overthrowing kings or people in high positions, was an astronomical term which referred to the revolution that a planet makes around the sun. Revolution was another way of saying a planet orbits the sun. It completes one orbit or completes one revolution around the sun. And because revolution is so ascribed, identified with Uranus, there can be this feeling of having come back to the place where you were before. And you may find yourself back at the place you were before, and maybe it's a relief, maybe it's a sense of like, how did I wind up back here again? Or maybe it's like, why did I go through all that trouble and I wound up back here, again? But it can be a feeling of like, what does it mean to be back here again? And of course, if you're back here again, you're really not back here. Things have changed irrevocably. And so even if you're giving something a second chance, it's kind of like Sarah Jessica Parker did Sex and the City, and now she's like, what did the show? And then like that, or something like that. It's trying to revisit where it was before. Well, she's not the same age she was when the Sex and the City started, and so they built the show around this new thing, but it's not the same. It can maybe have the same cast or whatever, but it's not the same. And this is kind of what Taurus is struggling with, which is it's not the same. If you felt like you were going through revolution and change and you needed to break out and go in a different direction, did you succeed in that? Or did you find yourself winding up back where you began? And so this is kind of that moment that I was referring to with Taurus in this episode, the moment I was referring to earlier, where that set was put down on the stage and like, what do you do with it? And it's kind of the idea of going and unpeeling the stuck corners of this set that hadn't been used for 30 years. It's kind of like what Taurus is facing right now. You certainly have made it to the other side of what has been a very difficult situation, but you may be wondering, is it totally new, or do I salvage what came before, or what's my relationship to things in the here and now? And this is the beautiful thing about Virgo. Virgo puts the emphasis back on the work again. Virgo puts the emphasis back in the present moment. This is a beautiful attribute of both Gemini and Virgo, that they're both ruled by the planet Mercury. Mercury is always looking at the present moment. It's a planet that lives in the present moment, and what can I use or utilize to my benefit? What can I put together? What do I need to leave behind? So Mercury is always judging things in the present moment. And as a Taurus or a Taurus rising, you might have felt like, you've been through these changes. You might have felt like you did the right thing. You took on these responsibilities. Maybe you took it. People blamed you for things or took things out on you or something along those lines. Maybe you got yourself, maybe you got loved ones through a very difficult time, and even if you lost everything, you were able to rework, because Taurus is an earth sign. You guys will always work and build. That's something that people born under Taurus or have Taurus rising will do. You'll come back from it, and you'll rebuild. But there might be a feeling right now of like, you know, I went through these changes, I experienced these hardships, I never stopped working. I was the good worker, I was the person who stayed focused, I didn't retreat, I didn't take time off, I got through all of this. And what do I have to show for it? What did I get out of this for me? I showed up at work, so the company did well. I showed up, at home, so my lover or spouse or loved ones did well. I showed up for my friends, so whatever. But what did I get out of this? And the beauty of the solar eclipse in Virgo is that it's going to ask you to sort of step out of the responsibility. I was the one who was responsible. I'm the one who took all the hits. And it's going to ask you, why did you do that? Okay, you chose to take responsibility, right? Okay, great. But that's a choice you made. You know, you chose to take the hits. If people were yelling and screaming at you or whatever, you chose to take the hits. That's a choice you made. Okay. And I think because Mercury, which rules Virgo, is so much about the choices, so much about the decisions, I think this idea of owning your choice. Well, I took responsibility. I chose to take responsibility. I took responsibility. I chose to take the hits. I took the hits. And taking the hits is something that Taurus does because they've got a thick skin. This is associated to the bull. It can almost be impervious in a way. But when you see that you chose to do that, and it's not like you chose to do it and now you have to live with it. It's like, I chose to do this and now I can take pleasure in having chosen to do this. I chose to show up at work and be responsible because I love work and I'm responsible and I love being responsible. I'm not going to entrust responsibility on people who are going to be unreliable. I love that. That's something I'm proud of. That's something I enjoy. Or if you chose to take the hits, someone was getting angry or irrational, they were blaming me for things or whatever, but someone had to be the center. Someone had to be the center that holds in all the cacophony. And I chose to do that. And I love doing that. That's the way I am, or that's the way I express love. That's the way I express care. So, in a way, Virgo, solar eclipse in Virgo is bringing you back into your moment to momentness, of like, well, I am responsible. I am the person who shows up. I am the person who cares. And instead of feeling like, and nobody else does, or they take advantage of me, which is what people, one of the words I brought up before earlier was service. People in service professions can feel exploited or used and abused. But if you were asked to do that job, and even if you were being exploited, used, and abused, Virgo would do it. This is why Virgo is the zodiac sign of work and service. Virgo can't say no to someone in need. Virgo can't say no to someone who needs help or assistance. Virgo just can't do it. They can't write people off. Virgo doesn't see serving or being there for someone else as weak, okay? It sees it as a strength. Caring for someone is a strength. Serving someone is a strength, you know? And so as a Taurus, if you can sort of, if there's been an anger or bitterness of feeling like you have to take it or being used or something, if you can sort of see that you would have done this anyway, because this is what you love to do. This is who you are. You would have unpeeled that set that had been stuck to each other and looked all of a mess. You would have done this anyway to try to figure out how to make it workable. If there's a way that you can come to re-embrace this in yourself again, and that's what I think the solar eclipse energy in Virgo is doing. It's showing you a part of yourself that you enjoy, but maybe somehow, made you feel like it was a weakness or like you were being exploited or used by higher ups or something like that. But if you can come and see that you would do this anyway, because this is what you love to do, if you can find your way to doing that, then I think you would have uncovered a beautiful blessing that the solar eclipse in Virgo has to offer you. If you're born into Gemini or you have Gemini rising, this solar eclipse in Virgo is taking place in that part of your solar horoscope which is associated to roots, home, hearth, and family. Okay. Now, these aren't things that a Gemini would normally be focused on. Okay. I mean, you'd be focused on in terms of like hanging out with family or doing different arts and crafts and activities and things like that with the family, or let's take the family and go out boating on the lake or something like that. But when it comes to governing the family, focusing on the family, this isn't altogether a Gemini thing, okay? Geminis like to sort of spend time here and then like to spend time somewhere else. Okay, so Geminis are constantly going in and out of different situations that they have. They're not really sort of like you have to plant yourself in home, hearth, and family Gemini and do your chores or something like that. Gemini is kind of like, I want to be out and about in the world. I want to see what the neighbor's doing or my friends are doing or what other people are doing. Okay, so Gemini likes to travel around its home. And in fact, Gemini's association is with those areas that are just outside the home, but not too far outside the home. So, for instance, Gemini's relationship to early education is that you can be raised in a home, but then you go to school, like, and that's where you meet people who aren't in your home. And so, how do you play with other people? How do you get along with other kids? Is who you are at home the same person you are at school? Probably not. Okay. You might be very shy at home, but you do very well at school and everyone celebrates you. Or you might be the favorite child at home, but then at school, you feel shy and timid and you're not as good at things as the other kids are. And maybe they even pick on you. So this idea of like I can be one person here and one person somewhere else is a very Gemini thing. Gemini was also associated to the marketplace, and that's because Mercury, the ruling planet of Gemini, is the planet of markets, of buying and selling and trading, of accumulating information, of hearing about neighbor gossip and spreading around the rules, spreading around the news and the latest to-dos of what went on with so and so. So Gemini, because of its rulership by Mercury, and it's also an air sign, has a tendency to do things outside the home, but they don't really go too far away from the home. They kind of come back. It's kind of like a cat. A cat wants out, because it wants to go explore backyards and prey on birds and hang out with other cats or fight with them, but then it wants to come back home at the end of the day. Okay. So it can go out the next day. So that's kind of Gemini's relationship to home. With the solar eclipse taking place in the zodiac sign of Virgo at the base of your solar horoscope, then the idea of home is going to be very pertinent to you. Maybe you're setting up a home, okay, in your life. Maybe this is your first time out on your own and you're setting up a home right now, or maybe you've moved in with someone, or maybe you've married someone or expecting a child. So changes in the home might be something that's drawing a lot of focus with you. Or maybe you're at that point of your life where the kids have gone off to college, so you're dealing with empty nest syndrome, or maybe you're at a point in life where you're maybe even retiring, and so you're leaving the workforce and asking yourself, is this the home I want to live in right now? Maybe I want to get rid of a whole bunch of things that I don't need, strip down to the bare essentials, or maybe I want to relocate or live somewhere else. So these are going to be questions and issues that you're going to be having right now if you're born under Gemini or have Gemini rising. But there's something else going on a little bit more of a deeper level, which is your relationship to home. Were you, for instance, raised in a home that was loving and supportive, where everything you did was great? Okay. That might be your relationship to home, and that might naturally be the home that you set up. And so the people that come into your home, whether you create a home traditionally or whether your family is the family you choose and not the one that you were born into, a family that you create with friends or community, you may be the center of that right now. You may be the person that everyone's like, I feel so at home with you, or I hang out with you, you Gemini rising, and you feel like family. I feel really welcome here. So you may be giving off those vibes right now. You may be giving off that type of energy, and you may be deriving a great deal of joy and pride from the fact that you are providing a home for people who might not have had it as good as you did, who might have needed a home or place to stay. Or maybe you're even a sort of older sibling to them, or even a parental figure where they feel very secure with you, that you make them feel like they belong and you make them feel like you're looking out after their own best interests. So this might be something that as a Gemini or Gemini rising that you're experiencing right now, which is a very lovely thing. But let's say you were raised in a home where that didn't happen, where you weren't made to feel secure or welcome, where maybe you're the black sheep of the family, or maybe your parents were just too self-involved or too busy, or maybe it was a single parent household, or maybe there were no parents. So this period of time for you may be something in which you're setting down roots. You want to set up the home that you felt you should have had. Okay, so you're setting down roots. Um, Maybe you're bonding with someone, setting up. Maybe you're buying your first place, or this is your first apartment. You're setting up roots, and you're very invested in this being different from what you were raised in, that this is going to be the success. This is going to be the home you should have been raised in all along. And it's interesting because that can potentially put a lot of pressure on you. It's kind of like, okay, now you've got your apartment, now you've got your space, now you've got your relationship, now you have your favorite rescue animals. Okay, you have to create this home now. You have to create this environment that you didn't have before. And so there can be pressure for you to do that. And maybe you're really good and you do create that right off the bat, and that's a great thing. But maybe you do stumble, you do trip, you do, try to make people act, or rescue animals act the way that they should be acting, which is appreciative of who you are and you setting up this home. And maybe they're not showing that appreciation, or maybe they want to contribute, but you're not letting them contribute because you have a very fixed set way of how it should be. What the solar eclipse in Virgo does, and Virgo, remembers, your sibling sign. Gemini and Virgo both share the planet Mercury as a ruler, but it's not of the same element as you. You're an air sign, so you think things through. Virgo is an earth sign, so it's all about grounding and rooting. Not rooting for the team, but rooting as in setting down roots. And so what might be going on during this period of time, or a way to work with the Virgo energy during this period of time, is to take that pressure off your shoulders, and to see what works and what doesn't work. Sometimes, as a Gemini, as an earth sign, and Libra does this too, and so does Aquarius, there can be an idea of what it's supposed to be, and then you trying to make that idea translate to reality and other people, and other people might be like, I'm passing on that, or maybe feeling a frustration or something like that. Virgo sees what works. Okay. Is this working or not? You know, Gemini has tendency to be more like, does this play well? Is this show going to play well in Pretoria? Is it going to go over well? Is it going to sell well? Are people going to want to come see this show, or they're going to want to buy this product? So, so Gemini tends to be more of like, does this play well? Does this get people engaged? Virgo is more like, is this working? Are we producing something? Are we going somewhere with this? Is it working out? So Virgo's perspective is a little bit different. It's more results oriented than Gemini can tend to be, and it's less involved with what other people like or don't like, and it's more like, because Virgo believes that, okay, sometimes you have to do the things you don't want to do to make something work. Okay. And so there may be more of an emphasis with that. So whatever you're experiencing in your home right now and really wanting your home to work, Virgo's going to show you how it can work. And part of making it work may be listening to people who are sharing your home, or observing and working with those animal rescues, or who are inhabiting your home. Maybe, they're acting out in some sort of way. And it's not about bringing them on in, but going to where they are and seeing where they're upset. So the idea is that if you can sort of take on that Virgoan sensibility of home and hearth, which is a place where you do want to hang out for a while. You're not so anxious to get away from it. Virgos love their homes and their hearths. It's a place where I do want to hang my hat and be. And so if you can embrace more of that Virgoan sense of being here now and really participating in this home, whether you're the center of the home and you're welcoming others into it, or whether you're trying to create the home that you want, if you can sort of take on that collaborative, but then at the same time, is it working, idea, which is a very Virgoan thing, then I think that you're going to really mine the depths of what Virgo has to offer. That Virgo isn't just about critiquing or finding all the things that are wrong, that Virgo actually is about crafts. Virgo is associated to handcrafts, that you can shape the home that you want. And it's more than just wallpaper and color schemes, but that it's really working with the people who are sharing that home. And out of that comes a sense of belonging, a belonging which is much deeper and much more nurturing than just roots. I mean, roots do nurture, but what roots also give is that sense of belonging and opening yourself to that feeling of belonging. This is something that I think the solar eclipse in Virgo really has to offer you on a very deep and profound level. If you're born under Cancer or you have Cancer rising, the solar eclipse in Virgo is going to be wonderful for you. And that's because Virgo is an earth sign, Cancer is a water sign, and the two elements form what is called a sextile with one another. This is not the same thing as a trine. That's where you're of the same element and you're immediately simpatico. It's more where the two elements get together in order to produce a result. Okay, when you think of Cancer, it's a water sign, and you think of Virgo and it's an earth sign. The example I like to share is planting something in the soil. Well, you don't go and just plant something in the soil and leave it alone there in the soil and it's going to take care of itself. You plant something in the soil and you water it. You care for it, you nurture it. And this is a beautiful thing that the water and earth signs produce when they work with one another. They grow things, okay? They grow things that become leafier, that become green in their foliage, and maybe one day produce fruit, something along those lines. This is a beautiful thing that earth signs and water signs can do when they get together with one another. And so when we see this solar eclipse taking place in the zodiac sign of Virgo, which is sextiling your sun in Cancer, what I'm put in mind of right away is the idea of nurturing things that are just starting out. Okay. So as a Cancer, you may be just starting out with something. Maybe you're starting out with a business that's in its beginning stages. It's just beginning. And so anything that's beginning, like a business in its early stages, you're putting a lot of work into it, you're investing a lot of energy in it, and you're hoping that it's going to take off, it's going to appeal, that it's going to grow like a tree grows. Okay, so there's a lot of work and there's a lot of energy going in here, but at the same time, there's a lot of nurturing, there's a lot of caring, and so where Virgo by itself might get a little bit more like, well, I'm a numbers person, let's look at the money that's going out versus the money that's coming in, let's run the accounts. Oh, this business is facing hardship already. It's the Cancer that knows it needs love. Okay, it needs water. And whatever this project is, yeah, maybe you're putting out more than you're getting back from it right now. Maybe you're working at a loss or something like that. But this is what you do when you begin something, when you build something, and you nurture it, you give it a lot of TLC. And so that might be something that you're facing in your life right now. Maybe you're dealing with a child who is at a point where they're leaving home to go to kindergarten, or they're leaving home to go to college, or um, they made a go of it in a relationship and it didn't work out, and you're helping them get back on their feet. So there can be something where you're nurturing and you're helping someone following maybe a start, or following even the end of something, and now they're getting back on their feet, or they're trying to salvage their life. So you may be playing that role in your life right now. Again, one where you are nurturing, where you are helping, where you are supporting someone in their efforts, not financially supporting, like, I'm totally financially supporting you and you're going to be a dependent, although you might be helping them out with money. That can be supporting in that way, but it's supporting with the aim to get them on their own 2 feet, not to take over all the bills for them and all the responsibilities for them. It's the aim of supporting and encouraging them to stand on their own 2 feet. Or maybe you're involved in the life of an adult. Maybe you've met someone romantically who's getting out of a marriage or a rough time, or maybe you're helping out a friend who's recently divorced or lost someone in their life. And they need help getting back on their feet again. This can be, again, that nurturing, that loving, that supportive way. But you're not covering the expenses. You're helping them cope so that they can take care of themselves again. Okay. And this is very important, this idea of helping them back on their feet, nurturing them, encouraging them. Because Cancer, let's take the Virgo out of the equation here for a moment. Cancer is a zodiac sign that likes to bond. Okay, it's a very mothering sign. No matter whether you're a woman or a man, there's a very strong mothering aspect, attitude, behavior to Cancer. That's the inclination to say to someone if they're really upset, would you like a bowl of ice cream or something to eat, or can I help you out with money, or it's to nurture, it's to mother that person. And this is what Cancers do typically. Okay, they care and they love on that deep a basis. Now, given their own druthers, they would just take care of the person. I love you. You're so important to me. Come live in my home. I'll cook for you. I'll share my meals with you. I'll pay for they'll take care of someone. They'll bond. They'll mother. And this is an extreme, but some Cancers have been known to smother, which follows the mother, the person. What the solar eclipse in Virgo does is that it makes you very mindful of the fact that this isn't you doing the work for the person, that the best nurturing, the best nourishing that you can do is helping this person back up on their feet so that they can take care of themselves. So what you're doing is that you're teaching them, or encouraging them to stand on their own 2 feet again. And this is very important. Mostly because each of us should be able to stand on our own 2 feet to our own abilities, and we really want to do it. Secondly, you're not taking on the life of someone else and doing the living for them. You're helping them to do this. But helping someone back on their feet, helping someone to stand on their own 2 feet is part of the maturation process, right? It's part of how you mature as a person, but it's also part of the astrological chart process. If you do all the work for someone, then that person never learns about their own resources. They never learn about their own talents or abilities. They never develop a taste for wanting to refine a skill because someone's always doing it for them. Okay. The maxim with Virgo, and this is a very important maxim with Virgo, is it comes from, I think it's an old Asian phrase, which is if you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. But if you teach a man how to fish, he eats forever. That self-sufficiency. I'm not going to do it for you, but I'm going to show you how you can do it for yourself is very Virgoan in nature. And when you do this, um, when that person learns to develop their own abilities, their own talents, their own skills, this is like an astrological chart. We're all born with our talents and abilities, but an astrological chart will show you what those talents and abilities are. But those talents and abilities, some of them might come easily, and some of them may need work. And so that's what an astrological chart does. When you go through transits that are challenging or difficult, you learn to pull on your own resources. They might be your own personal resources, or you may learn how to pull on human resources, working with other people to get something done. Whatever is the proclivity, whatever is the tendency of the chart, but it's the challenges and the difficulties that get you to connect to your chart and to actualize aspects of your chart. Just like whatever challenges or difficulties you face in life get you to call upon your own personal resources. It's that same sort of dynamic. And so if you can help this person to do this during this period of time, then you will be exemplifying, practicing the best virtues of Virgo, the best that Virgo has to offer. Virgo's not just like, I believe in you, make something of yourself. Virgo is, I believe in you. I know you can do better. So let's go back over this math problem again and figure out where we went off the rails. And let's work on this together. I'll show you how you can do it so that in the future you can do it for yourself. This is one of the best qualities of Virgo. And this is also one of the best ways that you, as a Cancer or a Cancer rising, can make use of the energy of this solar eclipse in the zodiac sign of Virgo. If you're born under Leo or you have Leo rising, the solar eclipse in Virgo is going to not really sit comfortably with you. Now, the reason why it's not going to sit comfortably with you is because it's taking place in the zodiac sign that follows your zodiac sign. It's a zodiac sign that's next to you, okay, in the zodiacal wheel. So it's a sign that you know is there, kind of like imagine yourself on a packed bus or a packed subway train. You're squeezed into a seat. You can feel that there are people sitting on both sides of you, that they're flanking you, but you can't really see them. It's a packed train or a packed bus. You'd have to like sort of lean forward and really look at them, but they're there. What happens here when you have a solar eclipse in a zodiac sign that's next to you, it's kind of like the near miss. It almost targets you, but it doesn't, okay, because it's targeting or it's occurring in the zodiac sign that's next to you. It's kind of like beauty contest. You're sure that they're going to announce your name and you're like, yes, yes, it's me. And there's like, and the winner of the beauty contest is, and someone else's name comes out. And it happens to be the person sitting next to you. They get up and go, and you're kind of like, you go from like, to like, yay. Okay, so that's kind of what happens when you've got transits going on in zodiac signs that are next to you. They're the one getting the recognition, or in some cases, they're the ones getting the grief and the aggravation, and it was a near miss, like it didn't hit you, it hit them. Okay, so there it can work out that way as well. So what this what the solar eclipse in Virgo is going to say is basically the message that it's communicating to you is that it costs more if you make more. And I want you to think about that phrase there for a moment. It costs more to make more. It costs you more if you make more. And what does that really say about where you are these days vis-a-vis finances in your life? You're at a position where you're doing well. You're doing better than you used to do. Maybe there's less costs, less bills to pay. Maybe you're making much more money. And this is a wonderful thing. You're not struggling in the way that you used to struggle. You're making more money, and as you make more money, you're feeling very secure and you're feeling very stable. But you also might notice that the bills have gotten higher. Like let's take a classic example: home owning versus renting an apartment. If you rent an apartment, you can have difficulties and stuff like that with the apartment, but you can always call the landlord and they're responsible for taking care of XYZ. If you home own, there's no landlord. You're responsible for taking care of X, Y, and Z. And perhaps that might be the best way of describing this to you now. You have a home now, and even if you don't have a home now, you're experiencing success now. You're experiencing status, making more money now. Okay, but it costs more to make more. That might mean more taxes to pay. That's an easy way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is that maybe you have to invest in a business. Maybe you're running your own business. You have to invest in your business more for upkeep, or maybe you have to invest in your home more for upkeep. You're making more money, and so more is expected of you. Now, this is a very hard thing for Leos to really wrap their mind around, okay? Because Leo's relationship to money is like, well, someone winning a race or someone winning a beauty pageant, like I ran really hard and I'm the winner I crossed the finish line. I won this race. That's great. I'm the winner, or I'm Miss America. They did call me. I love the roses and the tiara, a perfect fit. I'm the winner. This is Leo's relationship to money. Leo feels like if they make money, I get to keep it. Okay, I mean, let's be blunt about it. That's kind of Leo's relationship to money. I made this money and now I get to keep it. Okay, there isn't really a strong idea of like, now I have to spend it or save it or now I owe it or something along those lines. And this is something that always takes Leos a little bit of a little time to get over or to wrap their mind around. It's like, okay, you made money and now have to you have a higher lifestyle. You have more demands on you financially, more responsibilities. And Leo's kind of like, well, don't I get to keep it? Didn't you say I get to have it? And so this is kind of what's taking place right now. You've succeeded recently. Maybe you've gained new status, a new place in your life, a new tax bracket, and now there's more money that's going out than coming in, or you're worried that the money that you have is now being spent for all of these things. And that's where Virgo was saying, well, you have to like focus on the upkeep. It's not just you won that race, that's great, but there's going to be other races that you have to run in, or you won that beauty pageant, that's great, but how do we build on that? And so Virgo is an earth sign that's a builder. Okay, it's like, okay, you did that, but what do we do with that? Okay, how do we turn that into something more than what it is? And this is where Virgo is very helpful to Leo because Virgo is like, listen, there's no shame in going back to the drawing board. There's no shame in starting over again on something or practicing or making what you did better. Because what you do when you make something that you did better is that you create longevity. You do it again, but you don't do it again just to be tedious, like I have to run this race again. You do it because there are more championships, there are more rivals, there's a higher place to go. And so Virgo is that idea of like, you have to return to the job, the task, the challenge again and again and again in order to perfect it. Virgo is often called the perfectionist of the zodiac, and it can be, but it's not a stunted growth thing. It's not like I'm such a perfectionist that I can never accept anything as being beautiful. Like, okay, I'm dating someone and I'm such a perfectionist that I can't settle on this person because I'm holding out for something more perfect. Virgo has high standards, don't get me wrong, but Virgo's an earth sign, and earth signs are, at the end of the day, very practical. They'll work with what they have. All right. They're not going to hold out for, this perfect thing. Now, when you work with the idea of perfect with Virgo, I want you to switch it from a noun to a verb. Virgo perfects, that phrase, for instance, uh, practice makes perfect is the idea that like I keep practicing so I can be perfect. It's more that you perfect through practice, okay? You make yourself better through the practice of something. And that's basically what the solar eclipse in Virgo is asking of you. You may be like, well, I just got to this place in life and why do I have to spend things and go back to square one or start over again? And it's because you got to this place in life, and in order to maintain it and build on it and have longevity, you have to expend energy, you have to spend money, you have to invest of yourself again and again and again. Anyone can be a one-hit wonder, but if you want to create a body of work, which is what earth signs, Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn are always committed to, you have to return to the work again. The work is the truest way of going. So you may have made more and now it costs more to be making what you are, but that also gets you back into the spirit of work and on improving and perfecting and making things better than they are. And it's in this regard that Virgo can help you mine your resources. It can help you polish your skills. It can help you realize your talents. It can ultimately help you to realize your potential and really open up the range that lies there in front of you so that you're focused less on, I hit a home run, and more on playing the game and winning the game, which is much more of a Virgoan perspective. Do this and also accept that right now you might be in a bit of a plateau period where you're just feeling like you're working. And that's because you're betwixt and between at this point. But if you do this, if you maintain the lifestyle, if you maintain your expenses, if you make the most of your skills and talents, then when Jupiter, the planet of good fortune and higher purpose, comes into your zodiac sign next year, you'll be ready for it. You will have built the ship that when you unfurl the sail, that those winds of fortune will be able to fill and move you forward. But if you're just sort of like sitting around waiting for that to happen, that would be a waste of this Virgoan energy. What you want to do is prepare for that time, uh, learn the good habits of working and improving, and you will really, really set out a wonderful course for yourself, a course that will result in fulfillment and success as a result of working with this solar eclipse in Virgo. If you're born into Virgo or you have Virgo rising, the solar eclipse in your zodiac sign is going to be very important, pivotal even. As a Virgo, you embrace the idea of work and service in your life. This is something that you really believe in. You believe in finding the right sort of work for yourself, something that really challenges your mind, something that really stimulates your creative talents and abilities, and something that you find very engaging. When you're born into the planet Mercury, and the Mercury ruled signs are Virgo and Gemini, you have to be engaged mentally and intellectually with what it is that you do. If not, forget it. Okay, so if something doesn't challenge you intellectually or challenge your genius or challenge your problem-solving abilities, okay, which is very Virgoan, then you're lost. This is not the right path for you. This is not the right job for you. This is not the right relationship for you. Okay, if it's not stimulating you in these ways. And so this is part of what a solar eclipse in your zodiac sign will bring. it will bring a radical departure from the path that you are on. If, for instance, you're involved in a relationship that doesn't really stimulate you intellectually, then this might be a period of time where the relationship collapses or falls apart. If you're involved in a job where you're just sort of doing the same old, and you took it on for security and dependability, then this might be where you just can't stand it, or where you're just sort of like, I can't stand this mind-numbing work. I'm walking out on it. Or it can also show up in the reverse, which is you're let go. That the people your boss or employer says, sorry, but we had to downsize, and you're one of the people that were downsizing. And you might be like, how can you do this for me? I was always there for you. I was reliable. I did all these sorts of things. And you might even find yourself trying to talk yourself back into a job that you hated and dreaded. How can you possibly be let go? How are you going to take care of yourself? Things like that. An eclipse will bring about those things, because an eclipse is saying, basically, you're dying on the vine here. You're working at something that is so beneath your talents and your abilities, and that you really need something more, because you are starving for something stimulating in your life. We talk about starving, like starving for food, but you can also be starving for affection, and you can also be starving for intellectual stimulation, or something that really stimulates you as a person. And Virgo being an earth sign, you might have settled for something that was secure, something that was reliable, something that pays the bills and pays the rent. But again, being a Mercury ruled sign, if it's not fulfilling you, if it's not showing you how you can improve on yourself, how you can better yourself in some sort of way, then either you pull the plug, or you'll find that the solar eclipse itself is pulling the plug. And believe it or not, it's for your own good. So, on one hand, solar eclipses in your sign are good because they remove the obstacles to your path, they remove the things that have cornered you in your own life, the things that are no longer sustainable. But whether or not so good is that we might be like, well, solar eclipse, you may see that as an obstacle, but I saw that as my security, or I saw that as my stability, or that was my home you just wiped away there, or that was my relationship that you forced me to walk out of. Or that's something that I really loved and cherished in my life that I didn't want taken away, and you've taken it away. And this is when we have to remember that in astrology, the influences of the planets are not particularly personal or individual. There are times, if we're on the right side of that planetary energy, if there are times when, if we're on the right side of that planetary energy, say the whole sentence there, Christopher, then it's good for us. But there are times when we may not be on the right side of that planetary energy, and it's rough, mean, or even cruel to us. And there are times when we're not really apprehending the energy, and so we need to apprehend it in order to move forward, or to grow. But planets at the end of the day are planets. And if you think of the size of a planet and the size of you, planets handle us with fumbling hands. Okay. It's kind of like you trying to remove an ant. You might be like that, and to us, we might be like, ant, you're free. You're out of my house and free to go where you want to go. But the ant itself might have been like, like hit and, flying through the air with hurricane force or something along those lines. That could be sometimes what a solar eclipse can be like in your life. But for you, especially coming out of a period of time where Saturn was opposite you in Pisces, and right now, today, with this current time, with this solar eclipse taking place at the last degree of Virgo, it also happens to be taking place in opposition to Saturn at the last degree of Pisces. This is a line, this is a threshold that you're stepping over, and it's a line of finality. As a Virgo or Virgo rising, you're ending something in order to start something else. Or if you're going to renew your ties to something, it has to be without the scorecard. It has to be, like for instance, if you're renewing a relationship that had ended, maybe, or you were in separation, you're coming back together again, you have to do it without the scorecard. You have to do it without going back to. Because if you're going to go back to and wage more fights and arguments, then just be rid of the relationship altogether. And the solar eclipse will show that relationship falling apart unless you're going to do it in the spirit of something new. And that would also go for a job. If you take up with the job again, or you're working with people that you used to work with again, it has to be new. It has to be without relying on familiar things. And because if you try to repeat what's familiar, it's not going to work. And so the solar eclipse is going to insist that you approach something in your life with a fresh pair of eyes, new insight, a fresh perspective. And so the solar eclipse might have removed things that it decided were obstacles and maybe are, but you saw them as things that you cherished and really wanted. Or the solar eclipse is pushing you to make a decision, or rather act on a decision that you didn't feel like you could act on. There's no more ruminating. There's no more repeat cycle. There's no more going back over, you have to act on it. And you can't bring the old scorecards with you. You can't bring the old grievances, the old problems. It has to be totally new. That's the best way to make the most out of this eclipse. Virgo is a very hardworking sign. All earth signs, Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, work, and they work very hard. They're very industrious. But Virgo enjoys work and the process of work itself. It's not really big on results oriented, which is why Virgos often enjoy jobs where they are processing things. They might be administrative, they might be manufacturing, they might be crafting something. It might be something in which the job never ends. Like, let's say you're a nurse in a hospital. People are always going to be ill, so the job never ends. You might help someone who was ill get better, and that's a wonderful thing, but they'll be replaced by someone else who's going to be ill. Or if you're in a restaurant, people are always hungry. You're not going to be, you don't serve one meal, you serve one after another after another. So Virgos kind of flock to those positions where the job itself kind of takes over and you don't have to look further than the job itself. Okay. I always say that Virgo is the to-do list sign of the zodiac because it is a zodiac sign that loves and produces to-do lists like nobody's business. But the joy that a Virgo takes in a to-do list is that you make a list of things you need to do and you check them off as you accomplish them. And tomorrow you get to come up with a whole new to-do list. Okay. So it's not necessarily like I worked really hard to accomplish or achieve this. I work at to-dos, errands, tasks, assignments, things like this. And there are many vocations that are associated with that. But life isn't like that. If life were like that, then you would be like a hamster on an exercise wheel running in place. And this is what the solar eclipse is doing for you. It's releasing you from one way of living, one way of working, one way of being, and moving you forward. But you have to have accomplished, maybe ended, like I accomplished, I passed this test, so I got through it. Or you have to accomplish, like I produced this result. And you have to be able to say, this is done, and now I'm moving on to something new. And that's what this solar eclipse is doing. It's moving you on to something new because there's more you need to do. There's more you're capable of doing. You've done first grade. Now it's time to do second grade. It's and so this is really how I would describe this solar eclipse for you. You've graduated high school and now you're ready to go into the world, or you're ready to go to college, or you've graduated college. Well, you don't go and take up another course or another degree. You go out into the world and you work out everything that you've accrued in terms of studies, education, and experience. So the solar eclipse in Virgo is really pushing you to be out in the world and to take these skills and expertises and to practice them, but on a higher level than the one that you've been operating on. And this is something that's very important for you to do. Virgos have a tendency to slide back into the busyness of their previous life and this solar eclipse. And remember that the North Node is in Pisces and the South Node is in Virgo. Right now, this solar eclipse is saying, don't do past life stuff. Don't do things that were familiar from your past. You need to do future life stuff. You need to do next incarnation stuff. You need to do moving forward stuff. And as long as you embrace that spirit of moving forward, you will move forward. And I dare say, even surprise yourself with what you can do when you give yourself a chance to do it. That is what I would encourage you to do. And that is the way that I see you making the most out of this solar eclipse in your zodiac sign. If you're born under Libra or you have Libra rising, this solar eclipse is taking place in Virgo, which is the sign that precedes you in the order of the signs of the zodiac. Now, your first reaction might be like, thank heavens, okay? Like I've had 2 years of eclipses impacting my zodiac sign, whether it's a solar eclipse in Libra or a lunar eclipse in Libra. It's time for somebody else to be experiencing solar and lunar eclipses in their sign because I'm over it, okay? So as a Libra, you can say this is someone else's problem, okay? It's not mine, okay? I'm eclipse free this time, and that might lead you to embrace the person closest to you and kiss them on both cheeks and say, I'm eclipse free. And you are indeed eclipse free. This is a wonderful place for you to be if you're born under Libra or you have Libra rising. But it's also a very curious place for you to be, and I would dare say even a transitional place for you to be. The eclipses have done their work. Okay, they have gone through your zodiac sign either as a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse, and they have reoriented you in your life. And you definitely have experienced transitions and changes in your relationships, your alliances, and your partnerships, and even your whole idea of like, who do I want to be in a relationship or a partnership or a creative collaboration with? You're questioning how much you need people. Do you want people? Do you even feel like bonding with someone else these days? All of this is on the table, and all of these things you're questioning, and these are good things for you to be questioning. This is where one should be after they've experienced eclipses rolling through their zodiac sign. But this solar eclipse is taking place in that part of your solar horoscope that pertains to the 12th house in astrology. Now, the 12th house has a bit of a reputation. It's the house of undoings, like self-undoings. It's the house of self-undoings, betrayals, secret enemies. Oh, that sounds rather ominous. It's the house of incarceration. Okay, so that could be like prisons or jails. But places of incarceration can also be hospitals. You're admitted to a hospital, and so you need to be released afterwards. So these are all things that are pretty much associated with the 12th house in astrology, hospitals and prisons and things like that. And so it kind of had a bit of a negative reputation where people, ominous even. It's kind of like prisons and hospitals. Oh my goodness. But it's also where you went to rehabilitate yourself. Like, for instance, one of the things that the 12th house is associated to nowadays is rehab, like a rehab center, where you retreat from the world in order to restore, replenish, or rehabilitate, which also led to other areas that the 12th house ruled over, which were sanctuaries and spiritual retreats and convents and monasteries, where you retreated into silence to be away from the company of your fellow man or woman and to contemplate God or what is sacred. So these are all things that are associated to the 12th house in astrology. Another thing that's associated to the 12th house is what I call um, the closet where the family skeletons are stored. Okay, so the 12th house can deal with things that have been passed down uh, intergenerationally. Maybe it's difficulty with depression or alcohol addiction or drug addictions, things that previous members of your family have also experienced and it's been passed down generationally. Or it can be some sort of spat or feud or a difficulty. These are all things that are associated to the 12th house in astrology, and these may be things that are of relevance or pertinent to you now. But the image that I want to share with you today, the way that I'm sort of feeling the vibration of this solar eclipse in Virgo, is the idea of a closet. Okay. And a closet means a number of different things. People can be closeted, meaning that they're repressed in some way, or they're not being true to who they are, or that they're disguising or hiding their life from the eyes of other people. A closet is where you can also store things, like your wardrobe or your fabulous shoes. Okay. But a closet is where you can store things or pack things up, or it can just sort of like acquire things over time as you try to fit those clothes and shoes into that closet. With the cycle of eclipses having ended in your sign and then this new one in Virgo that's taking place, what you might be looking at right now, metaphorically speaking for yourself, is an empty closet. What you might be looking at, metaphorically speaking at least, is an empty closet. You've gone through these eclipse cycles in your sign where you've emptied out your life. You've gotten rid of the things that you didn't want anymore. You've gotten rid of, like clothes that don't fit you anymore or shoes you're never going to wear. You've made these decisions over the past couple of years to get rid of these things, that you don't need them in your life. You don't need to be carrying around this baggage or this extra stuff, things that you don't find useful or that add to your life. And so you may be facing an empty closet in some regard. Maybe it's an empty space where a relationship was. Maybe it's an empty space where a job was, or a family was, or friends were, that maybe they've left your life for a variety of different reasons, or things didn't work out. And so you're looking at this empty closet. Now, for those of us who have unpacked closets, like taking things out that we don't need or whatever, and you look at an empty closet, there can be like, oh my goodness, I didn't know I had so much room. This is so lovely. I don't know if I ever want to put something back in this closet again. Like it's this space and it's empty and it's vacant and it's not full of all these things that reminded you of things that maybe you didn't want reminding of. And it's there's a purity to it. There's an openness to it. And it's a lovely experience. And so you may not want to put something back in it. You want it just to stay a closet that's empty. Um, but over time, we do put things back. I mean, it is a storage space, and storage spaces being what they are these days, we kind of need them. But what's interesting here with this solar eclipse in Virgo, Virgo is very critical, very selective about the things that it wants. All right. And Libra is kind of famous for not making a decision. And we've spoken about this before in previous episodes. It's not that Libras can't make up their minds, it's that they know that when they make up their mind, it's going to set a precedent. That someone's going to be overjoyed with your choice and someone's not going to be overjoyed. They might even be hurt by your choice, or you choose one and you wondered what might have happened with something else. So this is why Libras really weigh in the balance, which is their symbol, the different choices, because they want to make the right choice. They want to perform good judgment. They want to make good judgment. That's what the zodiac sign's about. So when you combine the specificity of Virgo, the selectiveness of Virgo, the streamlining of Virgo energy, the editing out of Virgo energy, what this solar eclipse is reminding you of is you get to choose what you want in your closet. All right. In other words, you get to choose what you want in your life. You get to choose the people you want in your life, the clothes you want to wear, the path you want to follow, the person you want to be, who you want to surround yourself with, the things that you feel support who you are. Um, this solar eclipse in Virgo is essentially making you more choosy, and being choosy is a good thing. Now, part of being choosy is ruling out all the things that you don't want. And so don't be so quick to repopulate your closet. And or you may not feel in a hurry or an urgency to repopulate that closet. Again, as I was saying earlier, you might even feel like you want to put, a boundary around it and make that empty space sacred for you. But it will eventually be filled with something else. And this solar eclipse in Virgo will make you more discriminating about what you want to come into your life. And at the same time, if you don't like what it is in your life, you can get rid of it. It's kind of like when you go to a store and you purchase clothing with the intention of like, I'm going to wear it and try it out for a little bit, but then I know that I can return this, And so I want you to feel as a Libra that you have that choice. You have that ability right now. You can take something back if you want to. Libra is a cardinal sign. They tend to sort of stick with what they've chosen or decided upon ultimately. Virgo is a mutable sign. And what mutable signs are really good at, and Virgo's really good at, especially because it's ruled by Mercury, is I can try this out for a while and I can take it back. I don't have to live with this all the time. And so let there be some mutability. Let there be some flexibility in the choices that you're making. Make sure that you hold on to the receipt, that you can take it back if you don't want it, because that's the place where you are right now, at least for the next probably 6 to 8 months. After that, the energy of the planets will change and you'll become much more like, okay, I do want this here. There'll be more of a permanence that's going on. But right now, there's a mutability. There's a maybe I want this, maybe I don't. Let's explore. Let's experiment. Let's hold on to that receipt. Let's make sure that there's a return policy, even if it's just metaphorically. And that's going to give you the liberty and the permission to make the choices that you want to make of what you want in your life. And I think that if you follow that discriminating impulse of Virgo, that you'll find yourself really exercising, as a result of the solar eclipse in Virgo, the discriminating taste that has always been associated with people born under Libra or who have Libra rising. If you're born under Scorpio or you have Scorpio rising, you're going to notice that there's been a change in the people you surround yourself with in your life, a change in their attitude, a change in their perspective, a change in the way that they approach things. Now, being a Scorpio or having Scorpio rising, you're used to the changes happening to you, or the changes even being asked of you. Okay, one of your ruling planets is Pluto. You've got two, Mars and Pluto. Mars is your traditional ruler, and Pluto is your modern ruler, the modern planet that co-rules your sign, that co-parents the zodiac sign of Scorpio. Pluto is famously known as the planet of ordeals and the transformations that arise from them. So the whole idea is that being born under Scorpio or having Scorpio rising, you're used to experiencing ordeals, these descents down into the underworld. And Pluto is indeed named after the Roman god of the underworld. These descents down into the underworld, these descents into an ordeal, transform you. They change you on a fundamental level. There are plants that sprout and bloom and reach for the sun to grow and thrive. And then there are seeds that send down roots down into the earth. And it's by digging deeper into the earth, the roots that nurture and nourish the seeds and get them to grow. Okay, so the direction for people born under Scorpio or have Scorpio rising is more down to grow and to nurture and to strengthen than it is up. Okay. And so that was basically what the underworld was associated with. It was life underground, and life underground was things like roots or things that dug underneath ground. Okay, the riches and the resources that one can find underneath the floorboards of one's own horoscope. So with Scorpio, you're used to going through these transformations as pretty much as a result of an ordeal or difficulty, and then you descend down into the underworld, you connect with something which is very primal and very powerful for you, and then you reascend, you come back up, out of the underworld. It's kind of like Persephone being reunited with her mother Demeter, okay, at the end of her 6 month stay underneath. You you come back up to the surface world, and you are much more enriched and enlivened by this transformative experience. So you're the one who's used to doing that. Or you're the one who's used to people asking you to change, like people saying, why do you have to be so intense? Lighten up, or why do you have to be so scary? Be more friendly, or, why do you have to go through angst? Not everything has to be angst. Scorpio or Scorpio rising, it could be lovely if you would just, I don't know, change your point of view and not look at things negatively. Okay, so you're always being harangued with, make changes and look at the world better and change who you are as a person. You're too intense or too deep or too whatever, fill in the blank. So you're the one who's always being asked to change, like stop being so intense, or stop being such a downer, or stop being so, I don't know, whatever. Fill in the blank. As a Scorpio rising, I'm sure there are plenty of words that you can fill in the blank with. Usually, you're the person that people go to when they're going through a really difficult time. That's been the basis of many of your friendships and even some of your relationships. You know, Someone who used to be bright and happy has fallen on difficult or rough times, and they turn to you because they know that you know what it's like and you can help them through this rough time, and you're there. You descend down into the underworld with them, and you show them, that they can get through this, and it's about drawing on parts of yourself you didn't know that you had. And the person is like, okay, okay, and they're there with you and you bond with them. And so people who are going through difficult times, they know right away that you're the person they want to confide in, that you'll understand the difficult time they're going through. You'll understand the betrayal or the abandonment, or how rough life is being. And as a Scorpio, you'll be there for that person. What do they call it nowadays? I think trauma bonding. Scorpios trauma bond. It's just who you are. It's what you do. And you always think that, because you're with this person while they're going through their trauma, their difficulty, that this will be a lasting bond. Well, as soon as the person's on the other side of the difficult passage or the rough go of things, you're the first one that they leave and they go back to their life. Okay, it's kind of like we were really there for each other in the lifeboat, but leaving the Titanic, we were really relying on one another. But now that we've been saved from the icy Atlantic oceans by this passenger ship, I want nothing to do with you, and I'm going to go back to my life as it was before. This is something that Scorpios experience time and time again, over and over again. And it doesn't matter how many times you say to yourself, I'm not going to trauma bond, or I'm going to, regard my boundaries or whatever, you still do it. And you do it because it's your nature, it's your strength, it's who you are. You are there for people when they go through difficult times. And so now with the solar eclipse in Virgo, you're going to find that there are people who are there for you. Now, being a Scorpio, you're going to be like, wait, Christopher, what are you saying? I'm going through a difficult time now and I need help. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that you're going to find, as a result of the solar eclipse in Virgo, compatriots, people who get you for who you are and where you are right now in your life. This might be people you work with. This might be a new set of friends that's been gradually trickling into your life. This might be people that you meet who share your same interests, but they're at a different point in their life. And you're at a different point in your life in which these interests really come together, and you can form a community. It's more than just like, oh, I'm hanging out with this person. It's more kind of like, this person really gets me and I get this person. You don't have to do all the getting now, and you don't have to do all the changing now. You're not someone who needs to be someone different anymore. Because what the solar eclipse in Virgo is doing is that it's bringing people into your life who are like-minded, people into your life who have experienced similar things that you've experienced, or people in your life who really want to work with you on something. Maybe you're working on a project or an enterprise. Maybe you're part of the neighborhood cleanup community or something like that. Or maybe you're opening up a spiritual center or something along those lines. Maybe you're dealing with heavy issues and these people get it, you get it, and people are seeking you guys out as a group or a community of people who know what it's like to go through hell and high water and come back from that again. So this feeling of meeting with like-minded people, compatriots, people who get you, this is going to change you on a very fundamental and profound level. And it's going to do it slowly because the nature of Scorpio and Virgo is a sextile. So this is kind of like this energy isn't like a square where you're combating one another or a trine that's simpatico and harmonious and encouraging. A sextile, like the one that's taking place between the solar eclipse and Virgo and Scorpio, is kind of like a time release capsule. I don't know if you remember from the 70s, but like Contact, which, fought allergies, was a time release capsule. Like you didn't swallow it and took care of everything right on the spot, but it time released its medicine so that it affected you over the long part of a day, sort of thing. It's not a concentrated energy that hits you with its urgency and its power. It's an unfolding energy, a gradually unfolding energy. And so this is what you're going to be experiencing as a result of the solar eclipse. It's like being with like-minded people, being with people who really get you, and realizing that as a group of people, you can do things if you want. You can be of service to others. You can do things together in terms of pursuits, or you can build things together. But what this is going to change is this kind of loner status that you've had as a Scorpio, where no one gets it like I do, like, or I've seen the dark side of things and no one else is going to understand it. You're going to be welcoming people into your life who do understand that and want to do more than trauma bond. Okay. They're like, we get that. And how do we move this in a more positive direction or constructive direction, or just hanging out with one another and really, enjoying one another's company? And so this is what I see the solar eclipse in Virgo bringing into your life, this camaraderie, this sense of community, that together, if you want to, you can do great things. And that if you don't want to do great things, together you can enjoy things. But you're going to be doing it together and not apart. If you're born under Sagittarius, or you have Sagittarius rising, this solar eclipse in Virgo is going to be very powerful and very impactful for you, mostly because it takes place at the top of your solar horoscope. So it's taking place above your horoscope and it's releasing its energy. It's releasing its energy down into the rest of your astrological chart. So the top of the solar horoscope, which is pretty much known as the midheaven in astrology, is very much about things peaking, about things culminating. It's about accomplishments, it's about achievements, and it's about status. Whenever you see changes in the solar 10th house or the natal 10th house in a natal chart, there's going to be a change of status in your life. And that change of status could be good, or that change of status could be challenging. Now, as a Sagittarius, you're very much into inspiration, into big ideas, into breadth of vision and untapped potential. You feel like you have all this potential to do and to be, and it's yet to be tapped into. You don't really know what to do with it. All right. And so this plays into the Jupiterian energy, which is so prevalent in your zodiac sign, which is there are these places to go explore and to discover. If you're inspired to move and to travel. If you have big ideas, these are ideas that are global, they're huge, they're enormous, they're larger than just you, the Sagittarius or Sagittarius rising. If you have untapped potential, there's an exhilaration to that. There's, as I said, a freedom, a liberty to that. But there can also be this feeling like, I want to leave the untapped potential untapped. Okay. It's kind of like leaving a wild forest untouched. I don't want this wilderness, this forest to be untouched and corrupted and turned into a parking lot. It should be left free to be natural. And Sagittarius or Sagittarius rising, people with Sagittarius or Sagittarius rising want to roam where they've never roamed before. They want things to be untapped in their wildness or in their purity. There's a sacredness to this freedom and this experience of the world on a total level. But again, this kind of untouched, like I can go as an explorer or a pioneer, but I'm not a person who's going to settle. I'm not a person who's going to chop down the trees. I'm not a person who's going to build houses and then cities and then skyscrapers. I'm not going to ruin what is something's natural beauty. And for a Sagittarius or a Sagittarius rising, you experience yourself as being in a naturally beautiful state of possibility and potential. And you don't want that infringed upon. You don't want that limited, and you don't want it destroyed. So when we have a solar eclipse in Virgo taking place at the top of your solar horoscope, Virgo is an earth sign. And so it needs to see results of what it's put its energy or hard work into. If I have a number of things that I need to get done today, Virgo wants to see what the result of having gotten those things done today is going to be. Is it going to result in a paycheck? Is it going to result in a piece of ceramic pottery? Is it going to result in a deal that everyone signed on? Is it going to result in a clean room? Okay, so Virgo wants to see a result for its work and its efforts. Sagittarius isn't really results oriented in that way. It's big oriented, big frontier, big ideas, fantastic inspiration. But the results, it's kind of like, because Sagittarius is more of an experiential zodiac sign. It's the experience of that wonder. It's the experience of that discovery, that the experience of that creativity. And when you start messing around with it, you take away from the experience and you become formulaic. And that's something that Sagittarius and Virgo square on. They have two very different ideas of what this is. Virgo wants you to produce tangible results, and Sagittarius doesn't want to be penned in. Virgo wants you to tap that potential and to make something of it, and Sagittarius doesn't want to be henpecked or ridden or criticized or made to do something that it doesn't feel the freedom to do. And so Sagittarius, as a general rule, can be very much into searching and not necessarily finding. Okay, so Sagittarius, because pilgrims and pilgrimages are associated with Sagittarius, it's hitting the road, going out to the world, visiting the sacred sites, getting away from the village you were born and raised in, experiencing the world and having these extraordinary experiences. But Virgo is like, well, do you have something to show for it? Did you go on this pilgrimage and did you help someone? Did you keep a journal? Did you carve a cross from wood? Did you find a seashell and put it around your neck like Santiago? But Virgo wants you to have something to show for it. And this may be where you're feeling the struggle in your life. You may be experiencing people in your life, maybe it's a mentor, a teacher, someone who's going to help you realize your potential, and you may be feeling a resistance. That's not the way I want to do it. And so when someone says, okay, but it's the way that you need to do it, you might find yourself like, well, why? Why do I have to do it like that? Why does it have to be that way and not some other way that I'm inspired or whatever? So you may be like a horse rearing, that the person who's trying to take you out of the corral, or maybe even this feeling of riding you, and you're resisting it. You want to throw them off. You're going to leap over the corral. You're not going to be penned in. And so, and maybe you've had a pattern of doing that before in your life, of like, I'm not going to be penned in by these expectations. I'm not going to be penned in by this insistence that this is the only way I do this. I'm not going to be penned into this lifestyle or this philosophy or this way of being. But as a result of Saturn having been moving through Pisces for the last 2.5 years, you may not, you may feel like you've kept saying no and there hasn't been enough yes, okay, that you haven't really maybe tried, that you found your escapes, you bolted, you left, you ran away, you didn't show up. But do you really have freedom on the other side of this? Or if it's freedom, what are you doing with it? Okay. And I don't mean to be crass that way, but that's an earth sign question. It's like, okay, you've got your freedom. What are you doing with it? What do you have to show for it? And this is the story of the solar eclipse in Virgo. What are you doing with it? What do you have to show for it? You may, when in that Sagittarian embrace of freedom, it may be more freedom from rather than freedom to, which is always the great question with Sagittarius. Freedom from, okay, but freedom to? What are you doing with the freedom? How are you exercising that? And so you may be realizing right now that you need someone else to show you the way. You need someone else to help you develop your potential, to help you hone your skills, to develop your talents, to become something. All right. And that might be something that's feeling much more urgent to you right now and something that you really, really want right now. And if you haven't met that person yet, and I suspect you probably have, this may mean a recommitment to that person or going and finding that person again and saying, sorry, I do want to work with you right now. Or you will soon meet that person and you will feel that resistance. But if you can see how it's freedom to rather than freedom from, then you're going to be able to utilize freedom as something that moves you forward in your life, and not an escape route. You need to move forward in your life. You have so much to say. You have so much to do. You have so much to be, But in order to say and do and be those things, you have to work with and develop those talents, those proclivities, those areas of interest. And you need to apply to them a discipline and a consistency so that you can move forward. You can learn and you can grow and you can produce something, or you can produce a lot. So the solar eclipse in Virgo, it may bring up all of your fears and anxieties of being penned in or criticized or raked over the coals or, at a loss. And a solar eclipse in Virgo, the Virgo energy is not going to let you be at a loss. The Virgo energy is going to say, you're not at a loss. You can do this, you can do that, you can do this, and you can be back on track again. So Virgo kind of takes the mystery out of being at a loss and it says, here you are. So Virgo's going to move you from the searching to the finding, and with the finding to discovery and to doing something with it. And you're going to find that it's not an exercise in futility. You're going to find that when you practice real freedom in your life, then the fear of being defined by other people or squashed by other people's expectations goes away, because you're inhabiting your own expectations. You're inhabiting your own aspirations, and you're in charge of it. It's one of the great things that a solar eclipse in Virgo can bestow. If you're born under Capricorn or you have Capricorn rising, the solar eclipse in Virgo is going to be wonderful for you. It's going to be good for you. Good for you because it brings good things, and good for you because it's like vegetables that maybe you don't want to eat as a kid. You need to eat them in order to grow and be a strong, healthy individual. So it's good because it bestows good things. That's because of the natural trine between Capricorn and Virgo, but it's also good for you. These are the things you need to do right now in your life to become a better billy goat. Something that Virgo and Capricorn both have in common is they are hard workers. These are two very industrious signs. These are two zodiac signs that take work very seriously. But it's not just work for work's sake, but good work. Okay, work that produces results and results that you can be really proud of. Virgo will focus on something to the point of refinement. It wants something to be the best looking, the best possible thing that it could possibly be. And Capricorn's focus on work and the result of its efforts is to create something that is long lasting, something that has longevity, something that will not easily be forgotten or thrown by the wayside. So Capricorn is really about a permanence, and it comes from its planetary ruler, which is Saturn. There's a permanence to the type of work that Capricorn does. Not only do you know that the work that a Capricorn produces will be high quality and singular, but there's a permanence to it. So this is what Capricorn is always focused on. It's getting to the results, producing those results, and making sure that those results are a true reflection, a true expression of all the work that was put into it. One of the things that a Capricorn or a Capricorn rising is always obsessed with is time. And that's because Saturn is your planetary ruler. Okay, Saturn is the Roman version of the Greek word Chronos, and that was the name of Saturn in Greek mythology. Saturn was the god of time. And so Capricorns are very sensitive to their time being wasted. They don't want their time to be wasted with silly, ridiculous things. So if someone is like, well, can I talk to you for a moment? A Capricorn is likely to respond, I don't know. How long is this going to be? It's just a quick thing. And then if you start in on a long, detailed thing, a Capricorn will look at you with increasing exasperation and say, I don't have time for this. Okay. And so that's almost the Capricorn or Capricorn rising lament. I don't have time for this. You know, they're always saying, I don't have time for this. I don't have time to take these silly meetings about meetings. I don't have time to sit here and show you how to do the job. I don't have time to sit down and hold your hand through this. Buck up. You can do it yourself. So Capricorns are always complaining about the time that they don't have and the desire, the pure desire to be left alone. Okay. A Capricorn wants to be left alone to do the work that they can do. And oftentimes they're not really seen in a group. They'll go off and do their own thing. Even if they're heading a group, leading a group, coordinating group efforts, there's always that part of the work process where they want to be left alone to put on the finishing touches, to bring it all together, to negotiate something successfully. They don't want to be interfered with, and they don't want to be slowed down or bogged down by anyone else. But what can happen with Capricorn over a period of time is this, I don't have time for this, becomes repeated over and over again. And they can start without meaning to missing out on things. They can miss out on taking breaks. They can miss out on taking care of themselves. They can miss out on, I don't know, stopping by a garden path and smelling the roses, okay, because they don't have the time. They have to be somewhere else. They have to be pressing forward. They have to be making the most of what they have in terms of their resources and their time. The beauty of this solar eclipse in Virgo is that the solar eclipse in Virgo is going to remind you of the little things in life, all right? Because it's ruled by the planet Mercury. I like to say that Mercury is the planet, it's like the god of small things. It's the planet that really takes care with details and appreciates details, the small things that can be overlooked, the ephemeral things that if you don't make time for them will disappear like a bubble. All right. And so these are the things that are really given a great deal of value by zodiac signs Gemini and Virgo, or by people who have strong Mercury in their chart. So it's not a Venusian thing, which is I'm going to stop and smell the roses. It's a Mercury thing, which is like, isn't that a funny thing? Or isn't that a curious thing? Or let's go over and take a look at what that might be. Okay. And Virgo, being ruled by Mercury, will stop what it's doing or be diverted by something which looks intriguing or curious because they want to see what it is, how it works, what makes it function. Capricorn or Capricorn risings have a tendency to just walk past it. You know, my mind is fixed on higher heights, on greater accomplishments, on the hard work and the long process, which is going to produce a result that's going to be 5, 10, 15, 20 years in the making, okay, because it must stand the test of time, this result, this thing that I've produced. Okay, and Capricorn doesn't always acknowledge or appreciate all the little things that go into that. The little curiosities, the little distractions, the little details, the little things that were lost because the focus was further down the road rather than on the things in front of you. So the solar eclipse in Virgo is going to make you focus on the little things. And it can make you focus on the little things because it presents little things that are so attractive or interesting or fascinating. Or it's going to make you focus on the little things because solar eclipses have a tendency to do this, even in a trine, which is by creating bumps in the road, things that take you off the beaten path, because maybe you need to go in another direction, even if it's a trine. So even if we have a trine that's going on between Capricorn and Virgo, that doesn't mean that you're just going to be able to arrive at your result and things will be great. What it means is that maybe you need to take a look at the details of your life, or rather, you need to take a look at the details of your lifestyle. Are you making time for time with friends? Are you making time for loved ones? Are you making time for pastimes? Are you making time for animal rescues? You know, are you letting yourself engage in these other residents, in these with, or engage with these other priorities that you have in your life? If you keep crying out, I don't have time, I don't have time, I don't have time, you can find yourself in the predicament. I don't know, what was that song from the 70s? Cats in the Cradle. You know, I don't know if you remember that song. Cats in the cradle and the silver spoon, little boy blue and the man on the moon. When you coming home, Dad? I don't know when, but we'll get together then, son. You know we'll have a good time then. Basically, it was a song. I loved this song. I felt for this song. I was like 18 or something listening to this song, but I was like, oh no, I don't want to be cats in the cradle. Okay. And I'm saying this as a Capricorn. Okay. I'm sharing that with you. I'm outing myself as a Capricorn. But it's a song about this son who keeps asking for time with his father, and his father's like, I don't have time, but we'll get together at some point. I'm very busy. I have these responsibilities, all of these things. And so the time comes when the son becomes an adult, you know, and the father is at a time in his life where he's slowing down and retiring. And he's like, you know, hey, son, do you want to spend time together? And his son's like, I'd love to, Dad, but I've got the kids and I've got, you know, my job and all these responsibilities. But I'll find some time one day, Dad. One day we'll spend time. So it was like this really melancholic. I mean, only a Capricorn could love this song, but it was like one of these melancholic songs where it's like, I didn't make time for my son, but now my son is grown up and can't make time for me. What a bitter truth. Okay. So, but I make fun of this. I mean, it is bitter truth, but it's also a very important message and one that we can look at perhaps humorously, which is Virgo is here to remind you the nature of the ruling planet of Virgo, Mercury, is ephemera. Okay. Mercury is all about using the information or the resources that have a short shelf life, a short span on the planet, you know, and seeing the value and the delight in those things. That's why Mercury is the god of small things. And Capricorn is more Saturnian. It's more like, I'll get to it one day. Once I'm out of this busy period, I'll circle around and I'll get to this. But what's happening is that you're losing time. You say, I don't have time for this. Great. You know, and you may not, you may have things that are pressing, but if you don't make the time for this, and what this might be is a visit, a vacation, time with someone, time reading a book, time away from the millstone. If you don't make that time can't be recovered. You don't get it again. It's gone. And as a result, maybe those people that you were going to get around to touching base with one day are now busy and aren't available for you to touch base. Or maybe, that thing that you promised that you were going to do, I want to study or look into this or research or really sit down and learn about, you never end up doing. The time has been lost. And so in a very gentle way, in a lovely way, if you think about it, this solar eclipse in Virgo is reminding you that you can make time for it. I mean, maybe you fall behind on something or something, you have to make up for it or whatever, or maybe it was less that urgency or pressure that you put yourself under, and it was more the way that you had set things up in your life and the things that you told yourself. But this solar eclipse in Virgo is about making time for the small things, because not only is it going to be time well spent, but it's also going to restore and revive you in ways that you can't even begin to imagine now. If you're born under Aquarius or you have Aquarius rising, this solar eclipse in Virgo takes place at a very odd angle in your solar horoscope. And that's because it's taking place in the zodiac sign of Virgo. Virgo and Aquarius don't have a lot of things in common. Okay, they're not the same element. Okay, Aquarius is an air sign and Virgo is an earth sign, so they don't have that compatibility that you would have being born under zodiac signs of the same element. They don't trine, they don't sextile, they don't square, they don't even oppose one another. One can almost say that they have a sort of non-relationship. And that is what is called a quincunx in astrology. There are the Ptolemaic relationships, which are the conjunction, opposition, square, trine, and sextile. And then there's something like the quincunx or the semisextile, which describe signs that don't really get one another. That doesn't mean it's a plus or it's a minus. It means that they don't get one another and often have little to do with one another unless there's an eclipse or an important transit, which then draws attention or focus to that zodiac sign. This solar eclipse, which is taking place in the zodiac sign of Virgo, is also taking place in your solar eighth house. And the solar eighth house, or the eighth house in general, we all have 12 houses in our astrology house, is one of those taboo houses. Okay, the other one is the 12th house. The 12th house in astrology is the house of self-undoing or secret enemies, and it's got more going for it than that. In fact, the 12th house carries with it tremendous profundity, but it's pretty much known as being a house of ill fortune or bad luck, or it was at least until the 1980s. And then the eighth house was a house of taboos because it was the house of sex, death, and other people's money. There was an explanation for that because the eighth house is the second house of the partner, which is your seventh house. And so it talked about your partner's finances. Okay. And that a marriage traditionally was consummated through sex. And so there you get sex. You inherited from your partner upon your partner's demise. And so there you get death and then other people's money, which is the partner's dowry or the partner's estate. Basically, nowadays, the eighth house is a collection of many different things. Some astrologers will talk about it as the house of transformation. Some astrologers will talk about it as the house of sex. Some astrologers will talk about it as the house of obsessions or compulsions that you can't possibly control. So there are all sorts of things that can be connected to the eighth house. What I have found in my work over the decades that I've been practicing astrology is that the eighth house to me is still as confounding and mysterious as it always has been, that it can be connected to very traumatic events, that it can be connected to very powerful experiences. But essentially, what I've sort of seen it carry along is that it's a house of being beholden to. Okay. That if your sun is in the eighth house, for instance, you may feel in your life that you are beholden to other people, perhaps financially, or other people who are more powerful or who have dominance over you. The eighth house can be a private life or a secret life, like you have this one life that you show to the world, which is embodied by the ascendant, and then another life which is hidden from the world, which might be a more secret life. So as I said, there are a lot of things that are bound up in this eighth house. But if we go back to sort of sex, death, other people's money, we kind of hit on taboo topics. Um, one used to not always talk about their sex life. Nowadays, everyone talks about their sex lives all the time. But then also people talk about their dissatisfaction with their sex life. So sex, how you perform sexually, how you experience sex, it's still a bit of a taboo topic. It might be something where, like, yeah, I'm having a great sex life, and maybe you're not. Or it might be something in which it's like, I have a lot of questions about sex and where it goes, and I don't know if I can talk about it because, is it something that people talk about, these issues with sex and sexuality? Do people talk about these things anymore? And maybe there's an insistence that you're all supposed to be having this one type of sex life. So sex can still sort of be taboo. It can still be something that's hard to bring up with someone that you're intimate with, especially if you don't feel like you're clicking. Um, Death is pretty much taboo. That's going to stop the conversation at a dinner party, like, oh, a friend of mine is dying, like everyone's going to be like, oh, over steak dinner. And like, like, sorry, and it's just kind of like it's one of those facts of life, but one of those things that can stop a conversation or people don't really want to talk about. And certainly finances, if you're going through financial troubles or difficulties, those might not be things that you feel like sharing with other people. So the eighth house still has that kind of taboo topic, or that taboo aura that's connected with it. So the eighth house still rules over those taboo topics or has the taboo aura that's connected with it. But the eighth house can also really bond on a very deep level. People who've experienced those issues with sex and sexuality, people who've experienced death or those issues with death, or how do you face death? Duella, for instance, is something that's grown in popularity right now. There's much more conversation around death and dying than there was before. Or, how do you talk about finances and financial anxiety? Is it a source of shame to say I'm having trouble financially? Or is it kind of like, if you say I'm having trouble financially, how many other people are going to say, I am too, I am too, I wish I could figure this out, or I'm really, having a rough time here. There can be camaraderie that's formed by facing these issues together. Now, Virgo is, as I said earlier in this broadcast, the zodiac sign of work, health, and service. And so you might find yourself as an Aquarius or Aquarius rising in a situation where you may be working with someone who's going through these difficult situations. You might find yourself in a situation where someone is experiencing health matters or challenges, and they're looking for answers and they're not finding them easily. Or you might find yourself in a situation where you're being of service to someone, who's going through these issues that I've already described. Now, what I really want to focus on here, in addition to Virgo, is the ruling planet of Virgo, which is Mercury. Mercury, we often talk about as being the messenger planet or the planet of the mind. But Mercury, named after the Greek god Hermes, Mercury is his Roman name, was a very special god. Mercury was named after Hermes, that's the Greek version of his name. The Roman god is Mercury. Mercury was known as the companion to man, which I think is such a wonderful title to Mercury. In other words, you could bump into Mercury at the marketplace. You could bump into Mercury on the road. You could actually pray to Mercury and say, I've lost an item. Can you help me find it? Which is done to this day in Catholicism with Saint Anthony. You pray to Saint Anthony for and help to find a lost object. Well, that used to be Mercury or Hermes that you prayed to. So Mercury was not a god that was enthroned on top of a mountain. It wasn't a God that was enshrined at the bottom of the sea. It wasn't a God that you had to go seek in a grove of sacred oaks, or a God that was maybe found in a forbidden mountain far away that had oracular powers and that you would have to sacrifice certain things to in order to get the God or the spirits to speak. Mercury was a sort of day-to-day god, and it's indeed Mercury, by ruling Gemini and Virgo, that gives the sort of day-to-day quality to both of these zodiac signs. When we've got this solar eclipse in Virgo, which may involve you as an Aquarius or an Aquarius rising in some very sensitive topics with people in your life, or they're going through rough passages or difficult transitions, as an Aquarius, there's a tendency to be more remote, to be more like, let's go and look at the research data. I mean, Aquarius or Aquarius rising has a sort of scientific bent. It's like, let's go and look at the science and the statistics and the research data. And, I just researched all of this on the web, and I'm now going to present this to you. Okay, that tends to be an Aquarius or Aquarius rising tendency, because they believe in sources of information, accessing those sources of information, and providing the information, whether you want to hear it or not, to the person who is inquiring about it. All right. What this solar eclipse in Virgo does is that it says to you as an Aquarius or Aquarius rising, this isn't about having the answers. Okay. And it may not necessarily be about going and doing the research, although that may be involved as well. What the solar eclipse in Virgo is asking you to be is to be a companion to the person that's going through the rough time. Okay. And a companion isn't a therapist who sits in a chair going, yes, now I understand. No, that's not a companion. A companion is someone who goes with the person. Okay. Maybe you go with the person to sit with a financial agency that can help work out their finances, or you go with the person to a support group that can talk about sexual issues, or you go with the person to talk about death, or to look into how these things are dealt with. Maybe you go with the person to grief counseling, and maybe you're a part of that. The beauty of it is to be a companion to the person. That's what the solar eclipse in Virgo is asking you to do. And by being a companion to the person, it humanizes you. As an Aquarius, you can have a tendency to be distant or abstract. But as you become more involved in someone's life as a companion, rather than the person who's telling them what to do, but a companion, and maybe even seeking out, how do you do this thing? Maybe you yourself have questions of how do you do this? You become more intimately involved in the person's life. You become more immediately involved in the person's life. So you're more of a companion, but at the same time, this may get you to ask questions of your own and to pursue avenues that you hadn't pursued before, because you went on this adventure, this quest with this person. And so that's where I see the beauty of the solar eclipse in Virgo. On one hand, you're going to be of service to the person because you're accompanying them and you're helping them to find these answers. But then it may also be opening up in you your own questions and your own issues about this, and leading you to maybe become a companion with this person, or to find your own companion to discover these answers, or to discover different ways of looking at a situation or a matter. So through what could be, potentially a difficult or challenging time, because we're dealing with a solar eclipse in the 8th, maybe this also brings, or this will definitely bring, companionship and company. And with that brings comfort and someone to talk to about these things, where you're the person they talk to. You don't have to have the answers. And you go from bearing witness to actually being also involved in this person's life. And that opens up your heart, that opens up your mind, that opens up your soul, that creates a transformation within yourself as well, something that will be very powerful and something that will be very valuable because it creates one of those amazing experiences that truly enrich our lives. If you're born under Pisces or you have Pisces rising, you may be hearing a loved one or friend saying to you, "I can't make heads or tails of you these days." And you probably might find yourself answering, "Yeah, and neither can I." And that's because this eclipse is taking place right across the horizon of your solar horoscope. It's taking place in your opposite sign of Virgo. And so whenever we have a solar eclipse that's taking place in our opposite sign, that means that that energy is going on in the life of someone other than ourselves. That might be a partner, that might be a lover, a spouse, a creative collaborator. It's taking place over there. It's taking place far away from us. It's not necessarily impacting or taking place in our life. Now, the solar eclipse might bring about a breakup in some way, or it might bring someone who always showed up not showing up anymore, something along those lines. It's going to make you feel in some ways at a loss or bereft or without something that you used to have. And whenever you have a solar eclipse taking place in your opposite sign, that means it's taking place at the opposite time of year than the time of year that you were born. So in other words, if you're born under Pisces, you are born at the end of an agricultural year. You're born under a zodiac sign that ends one year. Pisces comes at the end of the agricultural year, which begins with Aries in the position of the spring equinox. So Pisces is very much, coming at the end of something. And so when you're experiencing the sun in your opposite sign, which is Virgo, then Virgo becomes more lit up, more vitalized, more empowered. And as a Pisces, you feel not as lit, not as empowered, really operating at a weakness. So whenever the sun is opposite yours in the sky at that time of year, that's the time when you're the most vulnerable. That's the time when you're the most low energy. That's the time when you're feeling the least motivated to do something. All right. And so with the solar eclipse in Virgo, you might also, if you've experienced a breakup, a business breakup, a romantic breakup, any sort of breakup in which there was someone that was there for you and they no longer are, you may be feeling at a loss and without direction. And immediately, people might be saying, well, that wasn't a good relationship, find a new one, or that wasn't a good job, find a new one, or that wasn't a great financial arrangement, find a new one. And you may be feeling right now like, I can't find a new one. I don't want to find a new one. I want what I had before, or these changes, this eclipse is making these changes in my life, and they're so bigger than me, and they're so overwhelming, and I just can't wrap my mind around it. So I want to go back to bed, or I want to retreat, or I just don't want to deal with this. Okay. To feel at a disadvantage, or to feel unmotivated, or to feel your solar energy weak is bad enough. To have on top of that some sort of call to action, or you need to move out, you need to move on, you need to move up as a result of this, and you're feeling this enfeebled, this uninspired. It's really, really difficult. It's really, really hard. And so as a Pisces or Pisces rising, you might just be like, you know what, this is too much for me. I'm going back to my bedroom. I'm going back to my bath. I'm going on a trip. I'm just like not answering the phone for like the next 3 months, or I don't want to deal with it. As a Pisces sun or a Pisces rising, you may feel very much like, I don't want to deal with it. And what the solar eclipse in Virgo is going to be saying is, I know that you don't want to deal with it, but guess what? You have to. You have to deal with it. You can't put this off. You can't postpone. You can't delay, because if you do, it's going to cost you, or it's going to put you in a worse position than you are right now. And so, as a Pisces, you kind of feel in, you kind of feel out, you kind of feel like you have to be on, but you feel terribly off. You can't make heads or tails of your situation. And your friends and loved ones are probably mirroring that. They might be saying, you keep changing your mind, or you're like a rudderless boat and you're going around in circles, and you're like, I know, can you help me? And they're like, we can't. You have to do this for yourself, Pisces. We're Pisces rising. And so, you're just kind of like, well, if I'm a rudderless boat, I'm a rudderless boat, and that's what I'll do. But you're missing something here. Not all calls to action require you to pick up the banner and to wave the flag. It's not like call to action, avant, like I must answer this call to action. This is not what's being asked of you. Not when you've got Virgo there, which is kind of your secret weapon or your secret helper. Although right now it doesn't look like that because it's opposite you, and Virgos are everything that Pisces aren't, and Pisces are everything that a Virgo is. That's what you have with opposite signs. What's going on here, especially since you have Saturn at the last degree of your sign opposite the eclipse, so you're really feeling the heaviness and the inertness of the Saturn now. What's important is to key into what Virgo has to offer, okay? Pisces, or Pisces rising as a sign, it's the general tendency or nature of the sign, is to globalize. It's to take one thing and then see its global repercussions. It's like when you flick a pebble into a pool, or a drop falls into a pool. It sends out a ripple effect if it's still water, and that ripple effect goes off in all directions. This is kind of a Pisces or a Pisces rising's relationship to action. If I do this one thing, it's going to go off in all these directions. And so what if it ends up, causing a collapse or difficulty or problem? Maybe I shouldn't do anything, or something along those lines. Or what do I find that one specific thing? And that's the magic of Virgo. Did someone say one specific thing? Okay, Virgo, the zodiac sign of to-do lists, action steps, and how to figure out how A leads to B, how it goes to C, D, and then E. Okay, Virgo has this talent, this miracle talent of breaking things down into steps. First, you do this, then you follow it with that, and then you do this right after, and then you do that right after that. Okay, so Virgo is anti-globalization. Virgo is, let's narrow the focus onto what you have to work with right now, what needs to be done today. You don't have to take on the whole new search for something. Just take one step in that direction. Let's say you're having difficulty, I don't know, managing your finance or something, and there are different financial agencies out there that can help you to manage finances. And maybe you've gone through weeks of like, I don't need help with finances. I should do it myself, or I do need help, or I don't want to be shamed, or I don't know, and so maybe the first step is making the phone call. Okay. And maybe you talk to an agency and they're like, sure, and we're going to walk you through it, and you're like, oh, really? And they're like, oh yeah, all you have to do is this, that, and the other thing. Okay. So Virgo, which is Mercury ruled, is about where do you get the information that's going to help you? Okay, right now. Not like, it's not philosophical information or abstract information or life of the planet, global warming's destroying us all information. It's what's the phone number that I call to talk to someone that I can make an appointment with, and going over what these difficulties are, and this person's going to help me solve this problem. Okay, maybe you make one phone call, maybe you have to make 5, 10, maybe even 20. All right, but it's that one step that leads to another step and another step and a step after that. When you access that Virgo perspective, that Virgo talent, that Virgo way of looking at the world, when you access that, at first you might be like, I'm a Pisces, I can't follow these steps. Okay. Then, okay, let's take the step again, or let's try someone else. That you can slip up, your Pisces fish, all you want, but it's about taking a step followed by another step and another step in succession that gets you to the information. All of a sudden, the world goes from being an overwhelming, at odds, I can't deal with it place, to a very accessible, dealable, manageable place, okay? When you do that, that's you tapping into Virgo energy. A solar eclipse is bringing energy into your life of that zodiac sign. It might be energy we get, it might be energy we don't get. In this case, it's opposite you. It's energy that you don't really subscribe to. But if you can tap into the idea that this is an action step you can take, followed by another, it's less about having to be big enough and taking on whatever, and it's more kind of like, okay, I can make a phone call. I can make an appointment. I can have a conversation. All of a sudden, it's not so forbidden or foreboding or larger than you. It's something that's kind of easy and manageable. And it's not something urgent, it's something helpful. Virgo is here to be helpful. It's ruled by a planet, Mercury, which was known in Greek mythology as the companion to man, the god that came down out of heaven and helped you to get from here to there. So what I'm saying is, don't resist or run away from the solar eclipse in Virgo energy. Realize that it's here to help out. Realize that it's here to get you from here to there. And if you can access that Virgoan energy, the world goes from being a place where you feel adrift and at sea to a place where it's really more about crossing the street and getting to where you wanted to get to all along.